I was just calling to say that I hope you're okay.
Hello and welcome to the First Comes Love podcast. My name is Eli Castaneda. I am so glad that you are here. I want to say thank you to those that are following, those that have subscribed to the page, and those that have shared our content. Thank you so much. Today I want to talk to you about some of the mistakes I think a lot of single people make because they're single, right? And I think that it's a scary place to be when you're single, and I get that, right? I get that it's a frustrating place to be. I understand that, and I can validate the feeling of loneliness, and I can validate the feeling of feeling that you're not ever going to be with somebody, right? I can validate that feeling because I've felt that before, and I've been in that place where I felt, hey, why can't I get a girlfriend? Why can't I be with somebody? Why can't somebody love me for me, right? I get that, and I understand that 100%, right? But I think that what happens is that we start feeling like that, and we get in our feelings, and we go down a slope that pretty much makes us make mistakes. And sometimes big mistakes, sometimes mistakes that don't have a lot of consequences, but they hurt us. And then there's the other flip side of that, where we make huge mistakes. We make mistakes that we regret maybe for the rest of our life. We do things that we shouldn't have done. We say things, we get into relationships we shouldn't have got into. And I think that that's the place where singleness can be a very dangerous place to go. And not just a place to go, right? Because you don't go to single town, right? But a singleness can be a very dangerous place if it's not dealt with in a way that is constructive and that is actually building you up, and that you're making time to work on yourself, right? And why I say it's a dangerous place is because if we don't get, and I've said this before, if we don't have purpose while we're single, if we don't have purpose while we're not with anybody, right? We can't expect to find purpose by being with somebody, right? Your purpose is never to be with somebody. And I think, and I say it again, Disney has sold us this idea, and media has sold us this idea that we have to be with somebody, and that we have to find the one, and that we're going to fall in love, and the fireworks are going to go off. And yes, they might, right? But what happens is, after a while, when we have been single for a long period of time, we start feeling that, and then we start making mistakes, right? So, what are some of the mistakes? What are some of the mistakes that you've made along the way? Maybe now you look back and you think, oh, I made a mistake. Why don't you type that in the comments right now? I did this, I did that. I shouldn't have done this, but I did it because I got desperate, right? So comment below. I want to hear from you. But I think one of the main mistakes that we make as a single person is getting into a relationship with people that we know we shouldn't be with. In other words, getting into a toxic relationship. And I don't know if you've ever been in a toxic relationship with a bunch of red flags, and those flags are huge, and those flags are waving in your face. But you know what? You stay in the relationship. Why? Because you think, oh, I can change them. I can fix them. They just need me. And we excuse every single behavior. We excuse every single thing because we start feeling either I stay in this relationship or I go back to being single. Either I put up with all the mess that they're putting into my life, or I go back to being lonely. And that's a scary place to be, because now you're choosing between two potential happiness. And let me explain that, right? You're choosing between the potential of being happy while you're in this relationship that is toxic and is not good for you, and the potential of being unhappy being single, right? Which you can change one of those, right? You can't change the person. You can't change people that choose not to change for themselves. And a lot of times we're trying to change people because we think, you know what, I think this is worth the fight. This is worth being in a relationship. If I'm going to be in a relationship and I'm going to be with somebody, it's going to be through this effort of me fixing this person And again, it's an excuse, it's a justification because you don't want to go back to being single, right? And the fear of being single keeps us in bad relationships, keeps us there suffering. A lot of times we're being gaslit, a lot of times we're being abused, right? And abuse is not just physical, right? Abuse is emotional. It can be with words, right? And a lot of people out there don't abuse you by hitting you, right? Some people know better, and they know if they put a mark on you, you can call the police. And some people go through the physical abuse. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but there's also mental and emotional abuse that happens, and people will say things and people will hurt you, and they know exactly what to say to hurt you. They know exactly what to say to keep you, right? And that's scary, to be in a relationship with somebody that knows exactly what to say to keep you in that relationship, because they know that you're lonely and they pry on your loneliness. And what happens is now you're in a relationship with somebody that makes you do things that you would never do, makes you say things that you would never say. You become toxic because of the other person. Many times we're not even toxic. Again, I'm not saying that we're perfect. I'm not saying anybody's perfect, but many of the times we go into these relationships, we don't really have any toxic things that are very apparent or things that we haven't discovered yet. But put yourself in an atmosphere or an environment that is toxic, very soon you will become toxic, right? And what happens is that toxicity, it kills you, right? Toxicity never just, okay, well, it stings a little bit. No, little by little, if you're exposed to enough toxicity, you will die, right? And a lot of times we have died emotionally. We have died up here, right? We don't think anymore. We don't rationalize things. We don't discern things. We don't look, was this right? Is this wrong? Right, there's a verse that I've often quoted when talking about this relationships is you can't be with somebody that you're unequally yoked to, right? And we can't be unequally yoked to people, right? And what does that mean? What does that mean, right? Maybe right now you're in a season of your life where you're in prayer, maybe you're doing really well in your career, maybe you're doing something that, man, like, you're very proud of, right? And a lot of the times when we decide to say, you know what, I'm just gonna go for whatever comes my way because I don't want to be single, we choose people that are not on the same level that we are, right? And again, this is not to boast, and this is not to make yourself prideful and say, you know what, I'm this person and I need, right? Because a lot of people, we have these standards that are unrealistic, right? And we have to set correct standard. That's a topic for another episode, right? But where I go back to is that a lot of times we find people that are maybe at a lower place than we are, and we think, well, with time they'll change, with time they'll catch up, with time they'll do better, and we don't realize that what we're doing is we're yoking ourselves to somebody that's not at our level, whether that's a spiritual level, whether that's career level, whether that's a mental level, whether that's a maturity level, whatever it is, right? A lot of times we yoke ourselves to people that don't match, right? And that's where the issues start coming in, right? That's where people start becoming who they're not. You become toxic because you're trying to change this person. And look, you can try to change a person for a month. You can try to change a person for 3 months. You can try to change a person for 6 months. But after a while, you're going to get tired of trying to make that person change. You're going to get tired of repeating yourself and saying, well, why don't you change this? Why don't you do that? Why aren't you more like this? Why can't you be more like that? Why do you treat me like this? Why don't you treat me like this? Right? Because a lot of people out there, when they don't value you, right, they won't treat you how you deserve to be treated. They won't treat you with respect. They won't treat you with love. They won't treat you in the way that you desire, especially when you're unequally yoked, right? Because what happens is maybe you're a woman, right? And you desire, that man to get you flowers, and this is basic things, right? Get you flowers, get you a nice car, to get you something, like treat you like the woman you think you are. And the man doesn't do it. And you keep asking, why aren't you doing this? Why don't you do this? And I know it gets awkward, but at one point or another, you start asking, why don't you do this? Why don't you treat me how I think you should treat me? Not realizing that you'll never be treated by that person like that, because that's not them. And sure, they'll do it for a little while. Sure, they'll change a little bit and maybe say, hey, I'm sorry or whatever, or give you this big excuse, but then go back to how they actually are, because they are somebody that's unequally yoked to you, right? And you might be saying today, well, maybe I'm in that position, right? And I think you have to think, well, how did I get into this position? Did I really get into this relationship because I was in love? Did I really get into this relationship because I saw that there was some kind of potential? Or am I here out of frustration? Am I here out of desperation, right? And a lot of times, the latter is true, right? We do get into relationships because we're frustrated. We do get into relationships because we have this despair in us, right? And I think that it's very, very, very important that we say, no, I know my value. I know what I'm worth. I know what I should be in. I know what I shouldn't be in. Right. And again, I recall that. I just recall getting into a relationship, and I thought the relationship was for me. I really did think that relationship was for me. And thinking about that relationship, I realized that relationship was really one-sided. That relationship really was me putting all the effort to keep the relationship alive, and the person didn't want to be with me. And that's okay, right? That's okay. But I wish I would have listened to the people around me telling me, hey, this is not for you. Hey, this relationship is not for you. You need to learn. Hey, you're making a mistake. You're going down the wrong path. You're going down a path that is going to end up hurting you, right? And again, when you're desperate and when you're frustrated and when you're in a place of that blindness where you can't really see and you can't really hear what people are telling you, then we do things that ultimately affect us and emotionally sometimes even destroy us and put us to the ground because it hurts, right? It hurts to be in a relationship where you're not being treated fairly or equally, right? So what's my advice to a person that's firstly maybe not in a relationship yet, right? Just wait a little bit. Just wait. And I know that waiting is hard. And I know being single is hard. But there is nothing worse than being in a relationship with the wrong person. There's nothing worse than being in a relationship where there's toxicity, where there's abuse, where there is a one-sided love. I'm telling you, there's nothing worse than that. So don't get into it. Just wait. Again, find purpose, find a way to say, you know what, I can do something for now. I can concentrate. I can focus on doing something that's going to benefit me in the long run. And then for somebody that's already in a relationship, right? And you say, well, man, I've been in this relationship and I'm starting to realize that, yeah, the reason I'm in this relationship is because I was frustrated. It's because I didn't want to be lonely. It's because I didn't want to be, by myself. So I got into this relationship. Hey, as long as, and this is my belief, as long as you're not married, as long as you don't have, some kind of obligation or commitment to this person, right? Then there's no reason that you can't stop the relationship or cut the relationship. Now, this is what's going to happen, right? Because when you're with a toxic person, right, they'll come and they'll convince you, no, I'm going to change. No, I'm definitely, that was a mistake. I can do better. Hey, think about this. You've heard it all before, right? You believed it the first time. You believed the second time. You believed it maybe even the 50th or 100th time. And who knows what time you're on right now that they keep telling you the same thing about changing. And they haven't absolutely done anything. They haven't got better. They haven't, changed any part of their behavior. They haven't done anything that you've actually said, hey, man, that's actually changed. They haven't done anything, right? And you're still there. My advice to you is run. Run from that. Flee from that. Don't be unequally yoked with somebody that's going to end up hurting you, with somebody that's going to end up leaving you anyway. Sometimes when we don't do the breakup, right? And we find out the person's cheating on us. We find out that the person is with somebody else. We find out that they were already in a relationship before you even got there, right? And man, that's some heartache and that's some heartbreak that you can avoid by saying, you know what? I'm gonna grow up. I'm gonna learn to say no. I need to stop and keep going, right? You stop, it's gonna hurt you for a little while. You're gonna recover, right? And again, I always go back to that. Find yourself a community, find yourself friends. Most likely your friends are telling you, this is not a good idea. Most likely your friends are telling you, hey, man, it doesn't look that great, right? Most likely, right? And a lot of times we don't listen, right? But it's okay. Stop. This is think about Jiminy Cricket telling you right now, you need to stop this and get something better for yourself. All right. So that's my advice to those two categories. The second thing I think we do when we're frustrated and we're single, right, is we fall into this pit of depression, right? And we fall into this pit of sadness and a pit that we feel that we can't get out, right? You feel that, man, like, I want to be single forever. I want to be, and that's not, and I want to tell you something, it's not true. You're not going to be single forever. Eventually, somebody will come around. Eventually, you'll meet the person that you're supposed to be with, right? But what happens is we fall into this pit of depression. We fall into this pit of despair. And that pit of despair and that pit of depression puts us in a place where our mind really goes to the deepest and most darkest places we've ever been, right? And we start shutting ourselves in. We start closing the doors. We shut everybody out. We shut our friends. We stop participating in the communities that we're a part of. Why? Because we're depressed, because we're sad, because we don't feel that we have any joy in our life, because there's nobody in our life. But here's the truth. The moment that you decide, okay, I'm going to connect with the people around me that actually care about me. I'm going to connect with the people in my life that actually want the best for me. Because there are people in your life that want the best for you. There are people in your life that want to connect with you. There are people that love you. There are people that want to be a part of your life as much as they want you to be a part of their life, right? But the moment that we fall into depression, the moment we fall into this depression of, hey, man, nobody loves me, nobody wants me, and we lie to ourselves that nobody wants us and nobody loves us, then we start isolating ourselves. And one of the biggest mistakes that a single person can make is isolate themselves from the group, is isolate themselves from the people that actually care for them. Because eventually that isolation will lead us to make mistakes and do things that we never wanted to do, right? And again, you can fill in the blanks there, and you can fill in the lines of what those places might be where that darkness can take you. But a lot of times, because we don't address the darkness and we don't say, hey, man, there's something wrong with me right now, that there's really something wrong with me, and we don't talk to somebody, then that despair and that depression takes over us, and it little by little destroys us. Just like a toxic relationship, depression and sadness and that deep anxiety of not having anyone will destroy you as well, right? Because not only can we be toxic with somebody else, we can also be toxic by ourselves, right? And again, singleness is not about, saying, oh, I'm all alone, nobody loves me. No. Singleness is about saying, what can I do to better the relationship with myself? What can I do right now, right? What can I do right now to make me happy? Where can I run to? Where can I go? What can I watch? What can I listen to right now that's going to bring joy into my life? And finding little things to make you happy. Like find a hobby, find something that you love doing. And I'm telling you, you're going to get such a great satisfaction and such a great happiness from being involved in something that you love. And again, that doesn't fix everything, right? That doesn't fix your whole life, right? It does, but what it does is it gives you something to look forward to every morning. It gives you something to look forward to every single day, right? So that mistake of isolating yourself and falling into depression and playing into the depression, right? And doing things that come along with depression, doing things that come along with being in that really, really dark place, right? Those are things that we need to learn to avoid, right? Again, we've all been there. We've all been in that lonely, depressed place, right? And we've experienced that kind of sadness and we've experienced that kind of grief, right? So we all need to say, okay, let me check my feelings. Let me check my emotions. It's cool. The Apple iOS, they have a mental health check thing, right? And it asks you a question about, how do you feel right now? And it lists emotions, and you can click those emotions, and you can go. If it's an app, I'm going to list it into YouTube. In the YouTube description. But what it lets you do is it lets you track your emotion. It lets you track how you feel. It asks you, why do you feel like that? What's affecting that? What's the context of your feeling, right? So again, log how you feel. And again, talk to somebody. A lot of times we keep it all to ourselves. And here's the biggest lie. I don't want to bother anybody, right? And we stay toxic by ourselves because we don't want to bother anybody. Right. But that's the wrong mentality. You need a community. You need to find people that love you enough to listen to you, to want to listen to what you have to say, to want to listen and want to help you get out of that place, out of that dark place, right? So I think to sum it all up, right? While we're single, we make a lot of mistakes. I know while I was single, I made some mistakes in my life. I made some decisions that I regret. And, you learn, you live and you learn, right? But why not identify those things? Why not avoid making those mistakes beforehand and say, you know what? I want to make the right decision. I want to make the right choice. And sometimes the right choice, like it or not, is to stay single. Sometimes the right choice is the one that you're already making, right? But we have to make it a conscious choice now. We have to make it a conscious decision and say, you know what? I choose to live this life. I'm going to choose to live the best life that I can. I'm going to choose a life that makes me happy, a life that fills me with joy. Because here's the truth. No matter how much you try to be with somebody, if you haven't found happiness in yourself and with yourself, somebody else is not going to make you happy. There's a funny skit, and I think it's an Adam Sandler skit, and he's promoting a restaurant or hotel. And in one part of the bit, he says, if you're not happy in your home, you're not going to be happy here. If you're not happy while you're at work, you're not going to be happy here. He starts listing out all the places where you're not happy. And he says, hey, our hotel can't fix your unhappiness, right? So it's the same thing. A relationship is not going to fix your unhappiness. A relationship is not going to fix you, right? We need to do some introspective searching, and we need to look inside ourselves and say, hey, I need to find joy where I'm at. I need to find joy in my life. And I'm telling you, man, take life, have fun with this life. Everything doesn't have to be boring. Everything doesn't have to be doom and gloom. And I'm never going to find, no. Be happy while you're single. So I think that's it for this episode. Thank you so much if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening today. If you haven't followed, if you haven't subscribed, I invite you to follow. I invite you to subscribe. And I say it every episode, and I know everybody says follow and subscribe. But if you have found value from this episode, subscribe to the channel. There's more content coming up. If you have found value, if you have felt that this really talks to you, or somebody that maybe is going through depression, or maybe somebody's going through a toxic relationship right now, you're like, hey man, you need to hear this because I think this is you, go ahead and send it to them. But again, if the shoe fits you, also wear it, so again, follow, subscribe, share, like, and until we meet again, this is the First Comes Love podcast.
I was just calling to say